Mike, like, how did you fall in love with basketball? Like, at what point in your life did it all sort of come in for you? I'm always curious to sort of the superhero origin story, as it were.
Right, yeah. For me, it was definitely the Michael Jordan era. So I got into hoops probably late 80s, early 90s, around the time when Jordan's getting his first championship, and you know, they're going for their repeat, three-peat, and all these things. And for me, it just, I think with everybody, I think, you know, going back to those days, you kind of forget just how great MJ was. And he just took the world by storm. He was in the league for a while before that, but when he actually started to become popular and everyone was talking about his shoes and, you know, and everything, just, he kind of exploded. And for me, it was watching Come Fly With Me and Michael Jordan's Playground, and I would just watch him over and over again, just studying his moves, and like, I just, you know, I want to be like Mike, just like everybody else.
Are you from Chicago?
I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. And we didn't have a team.
Right.
So the Chicago was like the closest closest team that we had that was like geographically close.
Yeah.
And everyone loved the Bulls because they were winning, and MJ was killing everybody. So yeah.
Did you ever get to see him play in person?
I did. My roommate and I got some scalp tickets for a preseason basketball game right on the end line.
Wow.
In the Chicago Stadium. Actually, was it Chicago Stadium or United Center? I think it might have been United Center at the time. This was like during my college years.
Yeah.
So that was my one and only time seeing MJ live. And he had one amazing dunk that game, which I did not see.
Oh no!
I looked down, and I don't know what I was doing. I was just looking down for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden, the crowd's just going nuts. And I look up, and I'm like, I can't believe I just missed that live. It was
that's pre-cell phone. What's your excuse?
I know. I think I was just looking. I know pre-cell phone. It's like, I don't know. I was probably looking around the stadium. I don't know.
I mean, floor seats is pretty cool. So.
Yeah, it was great. And it's just, MJ was just the guy that, for me, just made basketball this like, you know, this magical sport, and I loved it ever since.
Yeah, I regret I never got to see him. So I mostly grew up in Arizona, big Suns fan, which these days, God help us, but you know, the schedule is you get one visit a year, you know, for the Western Conference versus Eastern Conference, and the Suns were great back then, and of course the Bulls were what they are, and so the tickets were just like, you had no chance unless you were willing to really shell out. So it always seems like the chance to even see a guy like that play in person is a special thing.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't have to ask you who your all-time favorite player is.
You know, I don't know if it is MJ. Yeah. Oh, I guess I don't know. I'm a turncoat, because my favorite MJ was my favorite player, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, all the way up through college, probably. But then the league just started to change, and you know, I started to fall in love with guys like Penny Hardaway.
Yes.
I loved his game. I loved just his athleticism, his vision, his unselfishness, and T-Mac was another guy that I loved. And it just, I kept evolving, you know, like the league is just filled with so many dynamic personalities. Kobe's another guy, just like, you know, he's kind of a Mike clone, but just watching Kobe was just like, you know, this is a guy who's just like, you know, setting the bar
to win and nothing else.
Yeah, just like having that, you know, that Mamba mentality and that killer instinct was just, not too many guys have that. And then these days, you know, it's just, you know, getting to meet some of the players, you know, in your career. Then of course you get your new favorites, you know, guys who are just like awesome to hang out with, and you know, Steph Curry, meeting him in person, just one of the best guys, and so the list goes. And I have a huge list of just my favorite players.
Yeah.
Yeah. MJ may be the first guy.
Yeah, it's a valid answer.
And Pippen too, Scottie
Pippen.
Yeah, I was a big Pippen fan.
Nice.
Because I was kind of like in my play days, I was kind of more of a playmaker than a scorer.
Yeah.
So for me, Scottie was like, I was kind of the guy I wanted to emulate.
All-time great defender.
I didn't play defense, but yeah, he was.
So, what did you want to be when you grew up? Because looking you up, it looks like, so you got your Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology from the University of Indiana. So, I would think maybe video games weren't in your thought process at that point in time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are not wrong. I had no idea, Ryan, what I wanted to be when I was young. And I would think when I was really young, I think I wanted to be like a CIA agent or something like that. Just something, you know, with mystique. But I didn't know that game development was like a thing, like a job. I always looked at it as like, I don't know, almost like a movie, you know, like, oh yeah, there's the select few who get to do this elite job, this dream job that I'll never get to touch it, so I didn't even try. But yeah, I didn't know, and going into college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think I remember, it was like maybe the '88 Olympics. I saw this special on TV, and it was a sports science segment, and they were showing like the physics of, and the mechanics of jumping. And it was like showing a volleyball player, Steve Timmons, and David Robinson, and the differences of how they mocapped them and everything. And you saw the wireframe of them jumping. And I remember after seeing that, I was like, I loved it. I didn't know what it was exactly, but I loved the idea of studying movement and somehow merging sports with technology. So there was something there. I didn't know what it was, but the closest I could find to it was kinesiology. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll just study this. I didn't know what it was at the time.
So what did you think you were going to do then?
So throughout college, I think when I started to understand like I had to get a real job one day, I think I was thinking I'd be like a trainer, maybe a physical therapist, something like that, you know. But I didn't really know. I still didn't know. Through college, I was kind of lost. I spent 4 out of 7 nights playing basketball and volleyball at night, not studying. You know, I wasn't the best student. So I loved to play. So I don't know. I didn't know what I wanted to be.
So how'd you find your way into the games business then? I know, I'm not sure if High Voltage was your first gig. Okay, so how do you find your way there?
So after college, well, do you want the full story?
I do. That's what this show's all about. It's like
here's the full story.
I find it fascinating to see. You know, you're the gameplay director on one of the most unbelievably successful franchises in all of gaming. I'm curious how you get there.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I don't think there's a standard way into the industry, and mine is probably one of the more strange avenues to get to.
An even better story. Do tell.
So like I'm saying, I didn't know what I wanted to do after college. So after school, and I went to school at Indiana University, where by the way, these guys know basketball. Like everybody there, like high school basketball was like, you know, a national pastime for them. So just like growing the love of the sport there as well, and learning how to play and taking coaching classes, and some of the things you get to do is in that field of study I was in was like getting to learn from Bobby Knight, stuff like that. So it was just cool, you know.
That was, I mean, he was coaching then.
Yeah, he was coaching.
There.
He was our coach back then. But so after school, I moved back home. Didn't know what I was gonna do. I worked for Ballet Total Fitness as like a trainer for a little while, but that didn't stick because that was more like almost like a sales job. And I wasn't really into that. And then I worked at a Hollywood Video for a while. So I just didn't know what I was doing with my life.
Yeah.
And a friend of my sister's, and a guy that we knew from our church, he lived in Chicago, and I think he was just doing me a favor. And he's like, he calls me up and he says, you know, we have a job out here that I could use someone for. And it was for an IT job at a print design firm in Chicago called VSA Partners.
Okay.
So I had no other prospects, so I was like, okay, I'll move out to Chicago. So that was that. Went to Chicago, and I was doing IT work for them. And that kind of developed into what Jeff would do is he was actually starting web design for Harley Davidson catalogs and stuff like that. And so I was just watching him like, oh, it's really cool. I just got really interested in this whole, you know, web development thing. And that's when the .com was starting to happen, the big boom. Everyone was looking for their website.
Yep.
So I just kind of learned HTML and learned how to do some coding. And we kind of developed this, almost like this web development group. And so we started doing like catalogs and, you know, whatever, just all kinds of different things for different clients.
Sure.
And then eventually we both moved over to a different company called IXL, which later became Scient. And then, so I was doing web design and development for them. And in my spare time, I was a huge forum poster on Operation Sports, which is a sports gaming website.
Familiar, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I met Steve Noah, he was the owner of the site, and I met him, and I was like, you know, I know some web stuff, I can help you out, and just, you know, I'd love to just help out the site, you know, because I love the site. So I did some coding for him, did some, you know, some improvements to the website, designed the first logo that he had on the site. And so, long story short, I'm in the forums all day talking about NBA basketball. That's my thing. That's like the games that I loved. I was talking about all, you know, NBA Lives.
Still playing ball
2K's,
at night too?
All the time.
Yeah.
So I was just spending my time working during the day, playing hoops at night, like pick up ball, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And then surfing the webs and, you know, forum posting and stuff like that on Operation Sports. It's like all the time. That's all I did. And then one day Steve told me, he's like, you know, High Voltage Software makes NBA Inside Drive, and it just come out with Inside Drive 2002.
The first one.
The first one. And I thought, this was a pretty good game. I liked it. I was still like an NBA 2K guy back then. But this is cool. They're local. And he said, maybe you should go talk to them just to, poke them and see, what it's like in the games industry. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I called Scott Slaby up. He was the executive producer at the time of NBA Inside Drive. And then we just got to talking, and it was kind of trippy because he introduced me to the team, and they all knew me. They were like, oh, you're Beluba. It's like, oh, that's kind of weird. But I would post a lot, so they just kind of followed the forums, and they knew me. And so I talked about all basketball games all the time on the forum. So, and he basically said, we could use you as like an assistant producer or some guy who could help us with gameplay and ideas and manage the roster. That's when I was doing ratings back then.
So were your forum posts, were you maybe even without realizing it, thinking more, were you like critically about the design of these games? Was that sort of the tone of your posts?
I think so.
Yeah.
Just like your typical forum poster, not really understanding what goes into
but just
game development.
You know better?
I knew everything. I like, why is this the way it is? And I would just post these random thoughts of why don't they do this instead or this? And so obviously when you're not in the industry, your ideas, sometimes you just don't understand, right? You're naive to what goes into making games, and I was one of those guys, just like, I don't understand, why is this the way it is? And I would just say these things, and but yeah, I never really was in it to try and get a job. It was just a hobby. I loved talking hoops and talking games, and
but clearly your brain was wired in the right way to sort of learn more about that, and yet another case in point, as all 30-something episodes of this have shown me, that you followed that passion, sort of fueled. It got you noticed, if nothing else, right?
Yeah, I guess so. And there was, like I said, I was never posting to get noticed. It was just, it was a hobby. And what I did in my spare time was play these games, and I'd play these games, and I'd be like, I hate this. So I had to vent to somebody. So where better to go than the internet and just vent yourself, So I would just talk about random things, and so they wanted some advice on how to change their game.
So NBA Inside Drive was that was part of Microsoft's XSN big sports initiative back before EA came on and brought all the EA sports online. Microsoft, we got to have some sports stuff online.
Yeah.
And I remember them being pretty good. There was they had football, basketball, and baseball. I can't remember if there was a hockey game, but anyway, what did you learn by actually crossing over onto the dev side and working on the Inside Drive series?
A lot. I think for me it was so eye-opening to see just the amount of work that goes into what seemingly looks like a small detail of a game. And for me, it was just like, wow, I had no idea. And I'm trying to think back all these posts I've written over the these months,
regretting them all.
Yeah, just like how badly did I rip on someone's work? Just not understanding what goes into it. And so for me, it was just really eye-opening to see how much blood, sweat, and tears goes into like these small little features and details, and just everything that goes into game development it blew my mind. And I was just soaking everything in like a sponge, just what game development was, the processes, and production, design, development, and testing, and all these things. And so for me, it was just learning as much as I could for those first couple of years.